an FBI official, as you may have heard, tell CNN that the FBI director, James Comey, hasn't received an official request from your committee to testify. Chairman Nunes, spokesman for Chairman Nunes, says Director Comey would not come to testify before the committee without a formal request that has to be signed not just by him, but also by you. Nunes says you refused to sign that invitation. Is that true?
Well, it's certainly true. The chairman wanted me to agree to a hearing on Tuesday at 10 o'clock instead of the open hearing, and we were not willing to do that. In fact, we found about the cancellation of the open hearing in a very roundabout way when the agencies reached out to us and said, what do you want us to come talk to you about on Tuesday? And we had to say, what hearing on Tuesday? We have an open hearing on Tuesday. So that's the request that we got. We've made it clear to the majority we're happy to have Director Comey come back in closed session, but not as a substitute for the hearing that we were supposed to have with Clapper and Brennan and Yates. And I would also add, we now have the White House saying at least they want Sally Yates to testify. We would like her to testify. The public would like to hear what she has to say. There is no obstacle to having her come in now, except a decision by the chair not to reschedule that hearing. So what we have proposed now for days, we're still waiting for a response from the chair, is let's schedule both hearings.
So is there a stalemate now? He's not going to let this open hearing take place with Clapper, Brennan, and Yates that was scheduled for Tuesday unless you sign a letter inviting Comey to come and testify behind closed doors before the House Intelligence Committee. Is that the stalemate right now?
Well, you know, that is one of the issues. Just as far as the hearings are concerned, we proposed let's do both. We're more than happy to do both, and we're waiting to hear back on that. The broader question is, where does the committee go from here, not just on these hearings? And here's the challenge that we face. We have a chairman who got information on the White House grounds that he won't share, not just with Democrats, but with his own committee. And I just don't know how to conduct a credible investigation if you have let alone one person, but the chairman of the committee who's saying, I've seen evidence, but I won't share it with anyone else. What are we to make of that? And the problem is, this does not sound like a whistleblower. A whistleblower would have come to the committee. A whistleblower would want the whole committee, Democrats and Republicans, to see this evidence. Instead, we have someone else on the White House grounds, and that's cast a real cloud over the investigation. It's not enough for us to go through the motions of doing an investigation. We need to do one credibly, and I don't know how we can do one credibly under these circumstances.
So for all practical purposes, this open hearing with the three witnesses, the former officials during the Obama administration, the intelligence officials, and the acting attorney general, that's not taking place anytime soon?
Well, you know, we have asked the chair to reschedule it. He said
What does he say?
He won't respond at this point, but we are trying to get an answer. We thought we had a good compromise, which is if you want to have the closed hearing first, if that was the issue you had in terms of the open hearing, we'll do the closed hearing first. We can schedule the closed hearing on Tuesday. We can do the open hearing on Thursday. I think the reality is, well, they don't want to do the open hearing. They saw how the open hearing went on Monday, and they don't want to hear what Sally Yates has to say. I don't think, notwithstanding what Sean Spicer says, that the White House wants to hear what Sally Yates has to say. But I think the country ought to hear from her. They ought to know what were the facts that led up to Michael Flynn's firing. How long did the president know that Michael Flynn had lied about a conversation with the Russian ambassador? And bear in mind, this secret conversation wasn't about just anything. It was about, at least reportedly, sanctions that the Obama administration imposed on Russia over Russian hacking designed to help Donald Trump.
Congressman, are you talking with Devin Nunes? How are you communicating? Are you meeting? Because you used to have a very good relationship with him.
We did. And, you know, this has been, I think, very tough on all of us. This is someone I worked well with for many years, but I can't overlook if the chairman of our committee is going to freelance in this way. I have to be able to represent. We're doing a credible investigation.
So you're not even talking with each other?
You know, we are scheduled to talk tomorrow. I've asked for a meeting with the chair.
And has he agreed?
As far as I know, he's agreed to do it.
What time is that meeting?
I don't know the time, but we asked for a meeting today. We got a meeting tomorrow, and I hope that we can somehow get back on track. But the chairman is going to have to find a way to lift this cloud. Otherwise, we're going to need someone else to preside over this. I think we really do need someone else to preside over this if we're going to do this credibly.
I know you and your Democratic colleagues were very upset by that meeting he had at the White House last week. You saw that as what collaboration between the chairman of your committee and the White House staff, the president specifically, trying to protect the president, change the subject. Is that right?
Well, I don't know what the circumstances are. You know, I do know that apparently the White House told the New Yorker that that looked to the chairman to tell us something about incidental collection. That was before the hearing. That was before the trip to the White House. Then you have this evening trip to the White House. We don't know who he met. We don't know what he saw. And we only have the chairman's word to believe what he has reviewed.
Have you seen the same documents that he saw at the White House?
None of us have. And this is the problem. Democrats haven't seen it. Republicans haven't seen it. At this point, we only have the chairman's word for what it stands for. And the president, of course, claiming that what the chairman has seen somehow vindicates him. We can't conduct an investigation this way. That's not sustainable. It's not credible. So I would love to find a way for us to get back on track. But I'm not willing to say that something is legitimate if it's not. And this is going to have to be credible. So I hope we can find a way to get this investigation fully moving again. You know, for our part, as the Democratic members, we're plowing ahead. We're continuing to review the documents and making our witness list and planning to go forward.
But as of right now, you don't even know what those documents were that he reviewed at the White House. Do you have any reason to believe that the chairman and the source he had at the White House broke any rules by going through those documents?
I really don't know, Wolf. All I do know is that the unwillingness of the chair to disclose who this is and the fact that this source was located within the White House compound has raised a profound question about whether this is being done credibly or whether this is being done in concert with the White House. And given that it's associates of the president who are in some respects subjects of this investigation, that just can't be credibly continued this way.
You and the chairman have the same clearance, right? Security clearance?
Yes.
So you can see the same level of classified information. Do you have the required security clearances to go over to the White House and review these kinds of sensitive documents?
Of course.
So you have no doubt that what he saw, he was cleared to see.
Well, what he saw, he is absolutely clear to see. I mean, he's clear to see anything, as far as I can tell. The issue is not whether he has the clearance. There are two issues here. The issue is, why is this only being shared with one member? And why is this not being shared with the rest of the committee? There are other issues that have been raised about whether he can discuss publicly, as he has, material that was classified. But the issue I'm most concerned about, Wolf, is we need to do this investigation. It's too important not to. I don't think it ought to be just a Senate investigation. And the question is, how do we get this back on track? And I do think, regardless, it does underscore the need to have a fully independent commission analyzing this.
I just want to button this up as far as clearances. His source at the White House, do you believe that the source at the White House, do you know, first of all, do you know who that source is?
I do not know.
You probably have some suspicion, but you don't know for sure, right?
I don't know yet.
Do you know whether or not that source had himself the clearance or herself the clearances to share that information with the chairman?
Again, I don't know who the source is, so I don't know what clearances they have or had. But I can't say that the circumstances here are so irregular. If this is information that somebody wanted the committee to have, why hasn't it been presented to the committee? I can only conclude that it really doesn't show what it's being purported to show. But again, we're all speculating because the chair hasn't been willing to share it with Democrats or Republicans on the committee, and that's just not sustainable.
He says he's not sharing that information because he's trying to protect confidential sources and methods. You've heard him he made that argument here in the Situation Room the other day.
Sources and methods are what the agencies do in their tradecraft. It's not what the chairman of the committee does in meeting with someone on the White House grounds. That may be protecting something, but it's not protecting sources and methods.
The chairman, Nunes, he told Bloomberg the other day that he actually wrote down what he described as the identifying numbers of these documents so he could request access to them formally for the rest of the committee. Has he shared those numbers with you?
No, and I don't know what those numbers refer to. I also don't have any representation that he's asked the agencies, who presumably would be the custodians of these records, to provide them to the committee. So again, we're all speculating, and this is exactly the problem. We shouldn't be speculating, and again, it's not just me. The Republicans on our committee don't have any more idea what this is than I do. And if we're going to be doing a nonpartisan, bipartisan investigation, we can't have a chairman freelancing this way.
And you still want him to recuse himself?
I think it's in the best interest of the investigation, because I don't know that the public will have confidence in an investigation led by the chairman, given the actions of the last week.
And you don't think there's any way you can fix it?
I don't know. You know, I suppose if the chairman came clean on who he talked with and what he saw, and we could actually review the records, maybe there's a way of dispelling this. But I don't know. I think the fact that we've gone this long now, it's over a week, and none of us have still seen these documents, raises profound questions that only he can answer.
Congressman Schiff, there's more to discuss. I want to take a quick break. We'll be right back with our questioning. Stay with us. The chairman, Devin Nunes, he said today the committee probably won't hold any public hearings until after the Easter recess. That's almost a month away. Do you believe that he's trying to delay any serious progress in this investigation?
Well, it certainly is deeply disappointing if that's the position he's taking, because there's no reason to delay the hearing that we had scheduled for this week. As we were talking about earlier, if this is all about trying to avoid Sally Yates testifying, we now have the White House saying they're in favor of it, we're in favor of it, the public is in favor of it. So there's no reason to put this off. I do think that in addition to Sally Yates' testimony, we'll learn a lot from Directors Clapper and Brennan about the kind of tactics the Russians have used in Europe, with the kind of tactics they used here. It will fill out, I think, a lot of the picture that we got from Directors Comey and Rogers last week. So I think it would be valuable. The chair and I committed before this degradation of our relationship to doing as much of this in open session as we could. And I think that's very important. I think the public got probably its best glimpse yet at what this involves and why they should care about it.
So tomorrow when you meet with the chairman, you'll press for an early hearing, once again, an open hearing with John Brennan, the former CIA director, James Clapper, the former director of national intelligence, and Sally Yates, the former acting attorney general. That could happen. They were ready to testify on Tuesday, so that could happen within days.
Oh, yes. No, they're ready at any time. And I think they're certainly willing, prepared to come and testify. Well, you know, certainly I will propose to the chair, as we have for several days now, let's schedule both these hearings. I have no objection at all to having the Director Comey come back for a closed session, but of course one doesn't preclude the other. And if the real intention here is merely to permanently cancel and not let the public hear from these witnesses, the chair needs to say so. Otherwise, let's see if we can find a date.
The ranking Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee, the Vice Chairman, Mark Warner, he said it at the news conference with Richard Burr today that he's seen reports that what he described as Russian trolls, maybe 1,000 Russian trolls, were generating fake news targeted at specific states during the presidential election campaign. He mentioned Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. Have you seen similar reports?
We are certainly investigating how the Russians used paid media trolls and bots, how they use their RT propaganda platform to disseminate information, to potentially raise stories, some real, some not real, to the top of people's social media. We want to know, was that done in a very sophisticated way, in a targeted way? How sophisticated were the Russians in terms of what states they looked at? And obviously, this also could implicate the issue of whether there was any coordination between the Trump campaign and the Russians. But that is certainly an area that we need to investigate.
Senator Warner also says this is the most important investigation involving national security he's ever gotten involved in all the years of public service. Do you agree with him?
I do. You know, I think probably in terms of our national interests, there are two other investigations that are of equal seriousness. Obviously, the 9/11 Commission and the joint congressional investigation into 9/11 is in that category. That largely preceded my time in the Congress, or at least my time on the Intelligence Committee. But you'd have to go back to Watergate to find something truly analogous. And we need to find a way to bring back that kind of bipartisan ethic and commitment to this investigation, which has as much at stake.
Because Senators Burr and Warner on the Senate Intelligence Committee, they say they're open to subpoenaing various individuals, various agencies in the U.S. government, elsewhere, for information. Are you prepared to do the same?
Absolutely, and from what we understand, the majority is as well. And if we're doing this in a methodical way, as we should, we ought to be subpoenaing those documents, obtaining those documents before we have a single percipient witness, that is a witness to the events we're talking about, come in, so that we're well prepared.
Very quickly, would you subpoena the president's tax returns?
Look, I think we ought to investigate all of the Russian instrumentalities, and one of the things that the Russians have done, we know in Europe, is they use financial entanglement as a way of exerting influence over business people as well as political leaders. If we find evidence that they use that tactic here with the Trump organization, and those tax returns are relevant to that, then I think we pursue them. But I wouldn't, get too far ahead of that.
Will you subpoena the White House visitor logs to try to determine with whom the chairman met at the White House to review those sensitive documents?
I hope the chairman will decide that that he'll be forthcoming on what he saw, who he saw it with, and whether they have any relationship to the White House. We do need to get to the bottom of it. Otherwise, there is going to be this permanent cloud hanging over our investigation.
Sounds like you have a very important meeting tomorrow, face-to-face with the chairman. We'll see where this investigation goes following that meeting. Good luck.
Thank you.